All right. So, welcome to today's episode of Personality Typing with Habib. Today, we are typing Francesca Albanese. And yeah, she's from Italy, and she's the United Nations Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories. And as usual, the disclaimer is that there's no type accuracy guarantee. But yeah, we're going to be using the objective personality system as well as the Myers-Briggs system for typing a person's personality, which also reflects their psychological profile. And so the overview of this video is we're going to recap a little bit on the previous episode, which was Greta Thunberg, and we're going to review some clips. That'll be the bulk of the video, is looking through Francesca's talking points and things that she, just video footage of the person, so we can get an understanding of how someone's psychological cognitive functions are working, and we can get to know different kinds of people so that we can get to know ourselves as well as people in society. And then we can have a final guess for Francesca Albanese's type. And then all the way at the end, I just present who is the next episode going to be on. So without further ado, let's get into it. So last time when we typed Greta Thunberg, I did mess up the images of the actual type. So here it goes. Double feminine, TI, consume, sleep, play, blast, last, number 3, specialist, social type. So yeah, Greta is an INTP. That's a simple version. There's a reason why we have the 16 personality types. It's a very simple way of understanding the different possibilities for a person's personality. And so, yeah, she has a little bit of that kind of Elon Musk-like, way of looking at the world, where she is looking at things from a giant lens of how everything works and how climate is connected to humanitarian causes and such things. But there are some different possibilities for her type. She could be a sensor. She could be TI-SI instead of TI-NE. It seems like Dave or Shan are going to be doing a class on her. That'd be good to get, more understanding as to what her actual type is. I think it's possible she's play last, and it's possible that she's, sleep first. But yeah, anyway, I think that she's in the ballpark of an INTP. And yeah, so no revisions for now. I should really look into that more. But moving on, we're typing Francesca Albanese today, and my first impression is some kind of INFP. So Princess Diana, Tina Fey, Anna Kendrick are all INFPs. I think she's not far from that. There are some people in the community that she reminds me of. There's Amber, who's an INFP, as well as Sasha, who is an INTP. And I believe they're both, at least Sasha is social type 3. I think Amber might be as well. But yeah, that's basically the specialist role with the self-motivation over the tribe motivation. But yeah, all these people are consume and play saviors, which means that they have consume over blast and they have play over sleep. But yeah, so anyway, that's my first impression. And yeah, sometimes my first impressions go all the way, and it's hard to shake it. But yeah, it's there are some possibilities. I do think, INFPs and INTPs are technically very different, but I think they're kind of 90% the same. It's just, are you feeling at the top or thinking at the top? It's hard to, really ascertain that. So that's really the hard part, I think, with Francesca. But either way, she's very intelligent, and we're going to look into some clips for her. And specifically, we're trying to deep dive today on the social type 3, which Francesca probably is. So that one, there are 11 total coins. We can't prove every single one, but when it comes to social type 3, I'm pretty sure about this for Francesca because she is such a classical specialist. She really knows down to the details how everything is working for, the political issues or the humanitarian issues or whatever she's doing for the United Nations. It's very hard for me to articulate, but when you see a social type 3 doing their job, they're probably the most articulate at describing what is going on. So we're going to do a deep dive on that. And there was someone who commented on the Greta class that I was doing, the Greta video, saying, so there's Lawrence, and he says, hi, Habib. I was wondering, could I get a little bit more info on why you think the social type 3s are activists? I kind of looked at that as a social 4 thing. Someone else also says, Timo, he says that, yeah, he pictures 4s being activists even more, but if anything, 3s have more of the me versus the world energy. And yeah, that I think precisely nails that down. I do see social type 3s as kind of like the union leaders. You know, it's kind of the 3s and the 4s getting together, you know, we're going to explore this further in this video, but basically it's the specialists who have a very intimate understanding of what the problems are in society. Like, they've seen the crap, they've seen all the really messy details of how everything is going, and they're able to absorb that and sit with that a lot longer. So by the time they speak up, or they have the courage to speak up or band together, things have probably gotten really bad. Meanwhile, the social 1s and 2s are kind of very optimistic and just making the messes and not noticing all the problems that they're creating. You know, that's no offense to us. I'm a social 1, so I've created my fair share of messes that the 3s and 4s have had to clean up after me. And you know, the 1s and 2s who are really honest with themselves, if you're a 1 or a 2 and you look in the mirror, you know you've made some messes. But I'm not trying to attack anyone here. But yeah, so social type 3s and 4s are trying to clean things up, make everything like, you know, and you'll have good and bad, or like positive and negative people of all types. But that's generally what the social type 3s are doing. But we'll get to explore this more throughout this video. Just the 3s are self-motivated and the 4s are going to be more tribe motivated. So without further ado, let's get into the first clip, just so we can get to know this person who is working for the United Nations, Francesca Albanese, for the occupied Palestinian territories. Let's go.
If phase 2 is implemented, there will be an international stabilization force, which will also severely curtail Israel's ability to continue mounting the strikes that it has been.
I don't see that in that peace plan, because that peace plan refers to demilitarization and de-radicalization of the Gaza Strip and Hamas, whatever it is, whatever remains, but not of Israel, which is the state which has killed and injured nearly 200,000 people and left nearly 2 million to die.
So what do you mean? Are you suggesting Israel should be demilitarized?
I'm saying, I'm just posing another question. Why is the occupied Palestinian territory, which is unlawfully occupied by Israel, is to be demilitarized while there is this is something imposed on the Palestinians, which are the oppressed occupied people, but there is no conditionality imposed on the unlawful occupier, which has committed crimes after crimes. Israel has just killed, and these are the numbers that are ascertained, 70,000 people, and there are up to 150,000 who are injured with life-enduring injuries. I've seen bodies chopped into pieces, Krishnan, and this is not something that can be repaired. So the state which has devastated the Gaza Strip, which continues to commit violence day in and day out against the Palestinians, including in the West Bank, where is no Hamas, there is no question and no conditionality about restraint of military force of the state. Again, it's a very disproportionate plan.
It is clearly.
All right. So we're just getting to know her, and you know, we're talking about specialists and saying how they're kind of articulating what the problem is. And the thing is, when the problem gets bad enough or it's hairy, then who's going to track all the details of, you know, a horrifying situation? Like, I can barely talk about any of this, but Francesca is doing a great job, you know, getting into the gory details of what's going on here. And yeah, I mean, you need someone who could stomach the insanity that is going on in the world. And she has potentially double observing, I'm jumping ahead there with, but if she is a decider, she's going to be able to do the double observing, and you can see her looking at the intuition and the sensing, or the patterns as well as the facts, and going back and forth between those of a given situation, being like, does this meet a definition? Or anyway, we're going to get enough on that. But the interviewer, so we're going to watch a second clip of this interview, which is good to see, because the interviewer is playing more of this ST role, of like, hey, can we like be practical, or like, and then Francesca is going to kind of lean more on the NF. And so thinkers like myself, we're very uncomfortable with pain. We're uncomfortable to speak about pain. And Francesca, maybe if she's more of a feeler, she'll be able to speak about it.
Citizens to obey and look away, people don't bend, because they see the humanity of the other and their own humanity sacrificed in Gaza. And so maybe things will change also politically for us. I want to live in a system which is coherent, where international law is respected for the Israelis, for the Palestinians, for myself, and for you. Is it that much to ask in 2025, Krishnan?
Well, I mean, isn't the trouble that you are then in a situation where you say, well, the law should be supreme, and it doesn't matter about whether practicalities mean it's too difficult to deliver. You get into a very purist position when there is actually a process that you can engage with, that you can try and make better. Are you in danger of making perfection the enemy of the good?
That's so scary. That's so scary.
Well, I mean, I suppose maybe it is
the
scary.
Law is
maybe it
purism?
is scary, but maybe it's also the reality of where we are.
And Krishnan, if someone breaks into your house, you call the police, and the police comes and arrests you instead of the aggressor, wouldn't you be appalled and call for others to react and to protect you and to help you? This is the situation of the Palestinians. This is the situation of the Palestinians. And again, for me, I have no stake in this other than being a human rights expert who's been asked by the United Nations to look at what happens in the occupied Palestinian territory at the worst possible moment in history for the Palestinian people. And I have been the quasi eyewitness of a genocide, documenting it
Yeah, so just to finish up there, basically, yeah, there's a lot there. And she's leaning more on the NF than the ST. And it's interesting because she's trying to say like, hey, like, shouldn't we have international law? Don't we want to live in that world where someone can protect you if someone breaks into your house and you get arrested instead of the person who broke in? Can't we live in a world where the law is upheld? And the other guy's like, hey, let's be practical. And it's like, no, it's not really practical when the law is not being followed and even the ST is working against you. That's kind of like the dark ST, the negative ST, of when the reality is not really aligning with anything good in the NF. And so it makes sense. So I'm just saying that Francesca seems to be utilizing NF a little bit more than the ST here. But it's good to see the back and forth between those two because they're very different in that regard. It almost makes sense. It's like, oh, purism, but it's versus, like, perfectionism versus doing what's practical. And that's just, it becomes dark at a certain point. But yeah, let's see the next clip. This is going to be a good one for social type 3 in terms of what does responsibility mean? It means something different to every single person, but you even saw in the last clip where if someone has a job, that job, if you take it seriously, if you do the job well, it does mean that you have certain responsibilities. And she just so happens to be working at the UN, you know, in this area that potentially has this, you know, and she's calling it a genocide. I would call it that too, but, you know, yeah. So, but it's something that she had to approach this. She had to come to that conclusion. She had to get to this place where at first she didn't see it that way, and then she's starting to see it that way, and then she does see it that way. And so it's just this, you know, this double observing situation, as well as like, oh crap, it's actually my job. Because otherwise the social 3s and 4s are like, hey, that's not my job. But now it's like, oh, that is her job, you know? So that's what we're going to see here. And it's a good opportunity to see what it's like.
Or I don't think that I've been that different from my predecessors. I've learned a lot from them. And in terms of framework, use of the legal framework and analysis, I think I've really operated in continuity with them. Of course, the circumstances have changed. I'm 100% sure that had Michael Link or John Dugard or Richard Falk found themselves in this situation, they would have documented exactly what I have documented and probably gone to the same, arrived at the same conditions, at the same conclusions. What is probably different is the pace of the engagement. I have renounced, I've put aside my work, the teachings, the various teachings I had. And again, I felt this way. Again, I did it because of the genocide. In the context of the genocide, it was unavoidable. And of course, I want to resume my work, but it's also, it's incredible with all what's happening, not to, I mean, to be able to cut a line. Sometimes I would just like to see, I mean, not to deal with it anymore. I'm also tired and I would like not to look at this horror day in and day out. I would like to pretend like others are doing, that there are days without the genocide. Sometimes I would also like to forget the Palestinians, but I don't do. Not because I don't have the power, but I can't, because something inside me tells me, no, you are the special rapporteur. You are not any human being in this one. You have a responsibility. And if it were you on the other side, if it were your children, if it were your husband, if it were yourself in this situation, you would like people to speak out. And there are so many people who are speaking out, who are putting themselves in the front line, facing repression, beating, harsh punishment, even arrest and detention, suspension from work. Yeah, I have to be with them, and this is probably where I've got more active. I don't think activist is the right term, but yeah, surely I've been out there because now the human rights movement needs support from all corners. But I see other special rapporteurs.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. That entire clip kind of sums up her type mostly. But from a social type 3 perspective, it's the general framework is like, you want to say that it's not your job to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, except for the letter H or whatever. In my case is Habib, you know, but you know, you're very specific, but then because, you know, in this situation, Francesca is faced with the fact that her job is like, hey, you're like right in the middle of this genocide and you're the UN special reporter for this specific region where this horrifying stuff is happening. Then she's like, yeah, I can't look away. And that sense of responsibility comes up. And this is what it is for, you know, the social type 3s. If she was more of a social type 4, then it would be kind of like leaning on others a lot more. But you can see that level of self-motivation where she's having to answer herself. She's having to, you know, look herself in the mirror. And that's where the self-motivated aspect comes in. And the responsibility side is like, this is the specialist responsibility versus the generalist one. Where generalists, they're responsible for everything outside of their job. You know, like, it's not my job to do, you know, whatever the hell I'm doing today, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to take on all kinds of responsibilities, you know, except for what I'm supposed to do. But the specialists, you know, if it is within their job description, they're going to do it. They're going to do a good job, specifically because it's like, oh, well, this is in my job description. I better do a good job with this. And so that's what's happening with Francesca Albanese. And it's pretty admirable. You know, you do need people who have the role to do the job. And yeah, I mean, there's a little bit more here, but that was like a very important clip out of all the ones I'm showing today. And you can like replay that. I'm going to add them in the description so you can also take a look yourself. But yeah, the rest of the clips are going to be, you know, we're just going to try to prove the type a little bit.
Better to have those rights codified. And now for us, it should be easier to litigate and to vindicate those rights, because for many of us, especially in the West, those rights are part of our constitutional life and constitutional public life. So we should be less self-defeating and more engaging in wondering, okay, now this is my starting point. Human rights are my protection, are my armor. How am I going to use it in order to make my contribution to humanity? Because taking care of someone else who's being vilified, abused, violated is part of feeling human, is part of feeling that compassion means feeling with, feeling the sorrow of. And also, the other thing that is connected to this is that sometimes I feel that people expect change to drop from the sky. We are the change. If we don't manage to change ourselves, how we can change the environment? If we cannot, and again, and this is why I go back to the rights discourse. I see so many people being silenced and not reacting, and say, but your silence is normalizing abuse. So when I think of myself, I've always stood up for others. I've never been silent. I've been more vocal in defending others than myself. But I've also understood that I had to take care of my rights. It's something sort of innate in me, connatural to who I am.
Yeah, so you can see this, like, it's a very perfect demonstration of what the IP is going through, because you have the self and the tribe on polar opposites, where it's like, hey, I am speaking up for others, but I also need to speak up for myself. But when she is speaking up for others, there is that dramatic tension that's being released. And so that's something that, you know, she's advocating for here, and saying like, hey, you use the human rights as your shield, as your weapon, you know. And yeah, so free speech, free expression is important. And this is a good, inspiring message from an IP who almost sounds like an EJ, you know, and that's why those two are just so similar in that way. But it's kind of a balance of taking care of yourself as well as speaking up for others. You know, when you see other people getting abused, you know, if you're silent, then that's the kind of person you are. And can you live with yourself? And that's kind of the conversation she's having with herself. You know, it's like, what can you live with? Meanwhile, EJs will have a very similar conversation, except it's going to have the kind of opposite order of events, where they'll speak up for others first and then be like, wait, did I actually care about that? Yeah. So anyway, the next clip is about her being in Germany. where it's actually difficult to speak. It's so funny because, you know, Germany had the Holocaust happen, and now it's also kind of involved in covering up what's going on today. And so it's such a crazy place to be. And she is speaking in Germany, in Berlin, apparently, in this clip. And we're going to have 2 clips from this area. And then, it says they tried to silence her. Yeah, so she's going to be feeling a little tense here, which is also good for typing purposes.
Gratitude of so many for creating this platform for many to come together to speak on one of the most urgent issues of our time. Without your courage and dedication, we would not be here today. Although for the venue, we must thank Junge Welt, who has given the event last-minute asylum, and of course, you are unruly. And of course, we have to also acknowledge the Israeli ambassador, pro-Israel groups, and professionals mirrors in Germany, a number of German politicians, including the city mayor, Berlin police, without whose relentless work and pressure and intimidation, we would be in another much bigger venue. I know how you feel. I feel it too somewhat, even though the intimidation has gotten on my nerves, but not yet under my skin. And with German authorities' permission, I plan to return, as I said, to the safety of my home in Tunisia before this changes. We should not fear words. We shall fear crimes, those that commit them and those that who deny them. And as we proceed, I must acknowledge that some of the words I will speak today might be heavy. I recognize that many of you carry significant pain. And it is with this awareness that I ask for your patience and understanding as we explore these difficult subjects. Please know that my intention is not to add that pain, but to bring light, healing, and perhaps a sense of solidarity as we move forward together.
Yeah, I did want to stop that one there, because what she's talking about, it just feels to me, you know, I was kind of debating between FI and TI, but I thought, you know, whatever the case may be, what she said there is very much like the introverted feeling archetype, where she is talking about pain, but not to hurt people, not to burden people, but to bring that light and bring that healing. And that's part of what I'm trying to do as well. It's just, you know, as difficult as it is for me, as it would be for the audience watching, is I'm trying to navigate, you know, negative feelings as well. But you know, the people who have introverted feeling as a savior function, as a higher function, they're able to do that on a regular, consistent basis of just bringing up those negative feelings. And hey, you know, I know it's hard to talk about this. They're willing to have those hard, painful conversations, but that is supposed to bring light and healing to the people involved. But yeah, and she's acknowledging here the hostile environment. You know, that's a little bit of the IP against, you know, me against the world story. Like, she's just, you know, the fact that she's in Germany with the German police around who are hostile towards her. And yeah, I mean, if you read up on what's going on with Francesca Albanese, you'll see how much hostility she faces. And, you know, that's a classic IP for you, or even self-above tribe people, you know. So it's very brave and courageous what she's doing. So in the next clip of the same video, we're going to see a little bit of double observing, because I want to start proving, you know, is she a decider or observer? You know, like I even thought, is this an IJ or an IP? You know, I could see that she's introverted, but, you know, on the function wise, because otherwise she might be extroverted. But she has an introverted function at the top. Is it IJ or IP, right? And so we want to also get that cross check of double observing. So let's see.
Perhaps there would be far less controversy in the first place. And of course, there should be understanding and condemnation for what has happened to Israeli civilians during the brutal attack that Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups carried out on October 7. 2023, as there should be understanding and condemnation for the massacres, violence, and oppression that the Palestinians have experienced since the Nakba and before the Nakba, resistance and opposition to which are certainly not spared Israelis. But here we are in an era where speaking out of human rights has become a hateful act or even a crime, where truth is a lie and lie is the truth that is used to justify this. I mean, I don't see anyone, but I was prepared to see more police, however. Orwell's famous proclamation that war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, and of course, has never been more true than in the discourse surrounding Israel and Palestine. This brings me to the elephant in the room. The genocide that Israel has been allowed to commit after 56 years of unlawful occupation of Palestine and 77 years since the mass ethnic cleansing of the Nakba began. An event that was, in ways, eerie familiar in the present day, carried out amid massacres and destructions that have been recounted by its victims, Nakba survivors, but also recorded in the testimonies of its perpetrators in some instances, or documented in Israeli archives and brought to light by diligent and honest Israeli historians and architects who were able to access those archives for a brief period of time some 30 years ago. For even the most sophisticated and experienced practitioners of doublespeak, this truth is no longer possible to deny. I just want to point to one thing, and then we move into the discussion regarding, the topic of today, genocide. In July 2024, the International Court of Justice has recognized beyond any reasonable doubt that the occupation that Israel maintained in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem is unlawful and must be relinquished totally and unconditionally. The troops, the military barracks, so the military presence, but also the civilian presence, all the settlements must be dismantled.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm going to be linking the videos, so if you want to finish seeing all that, go right ahead once I link that. But the point of seeing this is to see, is she double observing? And I would say that yes. You know, it's kind of like, it's not that she's making a single observation being like, hey, it's genocide, and it's like, no, she's going to multiple sources, multiple people from Israel, people from Europe, people from wherever, and it's the experts, it's the historians, it's the records going all the way back 77 years ago, for the Nakba and all the events since, and she's able to articulate, debate with anyone because she has all the details down. She's specialized in this lane. And I encourage you, if you don't know what's going on, it's people like this that can explain it. I wouldn't trust myself to be able to explain everything that's going on, but people like Francesca have done the homework. I would also say like Norman Finkelstein has also done the homework. There are certain people who have done homework in this area that I would trust and I would recommend for people to go see and listen to or read. But yeah, there's she's doing her job, and it involves some double observing in her case. Yeah. So is this a decider observer? Yeah. The next two clips are going to be a little bit more just proving the things we already know, I guess. So we'll kind of move through it faster. So yeah, let's check it out.
That was close to the people. Now it's changing because this genocide is memory in the making for the younger generation. And this has created a sense of indignation that is also connected to the sense of indignation that ordinary people have vis-a-vis their own governments. Think again, Italy running for rearmament when the welfare state is in full decline. And this is why I do believe that things are happening outside the echo chamber of algorithms. But the difficulties arise, extra difficulties arise, especially for that, because, for example, the political landscape does not accept an alternative view on politics.
There is a widening gap between the people and their leaders.
Absolutely. I say I've never seen in my living experience and life such a hiatus between the political establishment with a chorus of media amplifying what they say, and the people. And so the challenge is that there is an incredible pushback on, which is even more ridiculous now, because, for example, in Europe, but particularly in Italy now,
they are reviving the debate about passing a law on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is real, is revolting, it exists, so as Islamophobia and other forms of racism. But they are trying to pass a definition of anti-Semitism that explicitly prohibits and criminalizes criticism of Israel, the state that has been committing a genocide for 2 years with full impunity and with so many supporting and profiting. So why? The people are not silly. So the hiatus is something that might, in a way.
Okay, yeah. But this is another example of her double observing, where she's looking at a definition of a word that, you know, is being kind of butchered. The definition of the word anti-Semitism, things like this. But yeah, anyway, this was a good example of her being a decider. And yeah, I forgot what the beginning part of that clip was, but it surely explains more, you know, the double observing, the decider. Oh, I remember the algorithm. The leaders and the people are very separate. And she's noticing that from a decider perspective of, you know, how's the people game going? Because it's not just about the observer systems. It's also about the people upholding the law, upholding the systems, upholding the definitions of words. And so it is a decider game. It's not just about observer stuff. And so that's a big lesson for me as well as a single observer. I think it's all about the systems, but it's not really true. It comes down to people and individuals upholding the law and upholding you know, the rights for people, human rights and things like this. So this is the last clip. There's something a little funny in the beginning, and we're just checking. We're trying to end on a little bit of humor. So let's see.
Now, it really, as someone has said, it only a lawyer can take ages to realize the political economics of the occupation. But however, 2 years later, I was into the investigation of all the companies that I had started to collect information about. 2 years later, because in the middle there was a genocide, I needed to make sense of the military assault that since October 2023, Israel had launched against the Gaza Strip, while also accelerating the annexation and the ethnic cleansing in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem. And as I collected together with my team and all the actors that contributed, the lawyers, investigative journalists, and others who contributed to the acquisition of information that I verified, to the setup of a database of 1,000 entities, of which I just collected those eminent cases that help illustrate the system. So, Amy, my report is not to be read as a duplicate of the database that the UN has set up years ago and is updating. It's illustrative of a system, an economy of occupation. Israel would have not been able to maintain the military occupation without the support, the means, the weapons, the machinery, the technology, the legitimacy that has come, including from the pension funds, including the Norwegian pension funds.
Okay, it's not exactly a joke, but yeah, basically her criticizing the lawyers or something being slow, that was kind of funny to me. But yeah, that's so she is a human rights lawyer. But yeah, it's interesting seeing someone who is a double observer who's like, oh, you know what, the single observation is actually true, when she does her homework and learns about all these things. And it's like, yeah, of course the lawyers are going to be slow at this. But you know, she did her homework, and once someone does the work, and then it's very significant because there's a lot of work to do. Because meanwhile, even those single observers find out really crazy things about the world. Like sometimes we spook ourselves too much in order to do the actual work that you need to do. Once you discover something as crazy as a genocide happening, it's like, okay, if there is something like that happening, then you actually have to do the work, figure out how's the economy of it working? How's all this other stuff? How's it getting funded? Who's connected? You know, there's also a certain file drop that happened recently that's getting a lot of traction. And so you need double observers. You need people to actually do the work once you figure out that there's crazy stuff going on in the world. So now it is finally time to start narrowing down the personality type guess for Francesca Albanese. So my first initial narrow down is self above tribe, intuition over sensing, and extrovert. You know, she is connecting patterns to things, and she's not really waiting for the facts. She's finding the facts a little bit later. She's making her conclusions, or not conclusions, but the categorization is happening first, and then she's backing it up with data. She's doing double observing, so we're going to get to decider. But she's also an extrovert, as in she's getting into the mix of, you know, getting involved with different groups, different people. Now, it might not be the case that she's an extrovert, but at least that's how I narrowed down initially. Yeah, because I just see her getting involved in all kinds of people, with all kinds of people and groups. And she was trying to do her job by talking to all the different constituents. Yeah. And so the second narrow down would be, I did see decider, and I saw gathering over organize. Now, the one that I would possibly leave is consume, play, sleep, but I went with consume, play, blast because she does seem to be information dominant. Like when you talk to energy doms, you don't really learn all that much about knowledge, but when you listen to information dominant people, they have a lot of knowledge and information that they're relaying to you in a way that's digestible, and it's generally correct or accurate. For me, as an energy dom, I'm going a little bit more on vibes, being like, hey, you know, the vibes here or in that room were not that good. You know, it's a completely different set of equations. So I see her as information dominant. And yeah, so that would also still be extroverted. And so between introverted feeling and introverted thinking, that is kind of the confusion spot for me. But I am leaning towards one way. So yeah, my first initial guess, which will end up being my final guess actually, is INFP standard. And we're going to get into that. But before I do, I'll just show the runner-up for me was the TINE version, because I thought she does look a lot like Sasha, who is in the community as an INTP, number 3, this exact type. But I do think Francesca might be the FI version. So here is my final guess: double feminine, FINE, consume, play, blast, sleep last, number 3. So that is a specialist, an extroverted specialist, but with an introverted feeling at the top, introverted sensing third, and, you know, of course, extroverted intuition second, and extroverted thinking last. So it's very interesting to see people use their fourth function, use all 4 animals, use their complete brain, you know, to execute their vision of how they need to do their job, do their work, live their life. So it's a very admirable person. There are people who say that Francesca should get the Nobel Prize or Nobel Peace Prize or something. And I would say that that's definitely possible. I would definitely support that. But yeah, she's done a really good job of articulating what's going on here. And actually that's kind of a point for NT play, or even just NT being high, because articulating very hairy categories like the category of genocide versus ethnic cleansing, this is important stuff to navigate. And that's, you know, one of the cool things about the extroverted intuition or the NE-SI axis, that you are looking at words and you are looking at definitions. And this is something that we all have to do, or at least delegate to someone we trust, or about these words, because they actually matter. You can't just like call someone a loser, you know, with the SCFE functions like Trump. You have to be careful with your words and use them appropriately. But anyway, it was a blast typing her. It was, you know, yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff, but she does a good job of making it easier to learn about the horrifying reality and still have a positive message about international law and human rights. This is very important stuff. So yeah, in 2 weeks, we're going to be typing Dua Lipa, who Lily has also typed, and I'll shout her out in my description. And yeah, she's a singer-songwriter who also supports the Palestinian cause. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I have no idea what her type is. I haven't looked into it yet, but I will. And yeah, it's been really fun typing these people. So that'll be episode 18, and we'll just keep this going every 2 weeks. And thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I appreciate you for